What's up, guys? I'm EJ. I'm joined by Kendall. We're here for another NBA draft comparison video. This time we'll be looking at 4 freshman players, guys who came and had incredible freshman seasons and now looking at being potential lottery picks. Some guys a little more heralded, other guys maybe came a little bit under the radar, but yet impacted greatly during their freshman year on their teams and now are looking to be top-notch pros. So, Kendall, we got a good list here. We're talking about point guard from Arizona, Nico Mannion. We got another point guard in Tyrell, Tyrese Maxey from Kentucky, and Achiuwa from Memphis. What stands out to you about this group?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, all 4 of them freshmen. 3 of those guys, Mannion, Maxey, and Achiuwa, were all 5-star down All-Americans coming out of high school. Terry was not. He kind of came in a little more under the radar, but really showed out in his 1 year at Stanford, averaging 14 points a game and shooting 44% from the field. So he's a guy that's entered the draft and is, become a first-round pick type of talent. But all 4 of these guys all impacted the game, like you mentioned, in their first season of college basketball and their only season of college basketball. And all 4 of them project to be first-round picks, so it should be interesting. And the way these mock drafts are, all these guys probably could be lottery picks, but all of them, there's a good chance also none of them could be lottery picks. So it's very volatile the way this draft has played out so far.
Yeah, I think that this is, obviously with all that's happening without having a March Madness to kind of see how these guys' freshman years finished out, I think there's a lot of uncertainty. I feel like this draft could end up being one of the more unpredictable ones once it gets started, especially considering there aren't really serious top guys who feel like are definitely clear #1 picks, or guys who are even clear lottery picks. There are a lot of wavering opinions on a lot of these guys, so I'm curious to get your thoughts on these players as well. So let's start with Nico Mannion, point guard from Arizona. I'll actually go first here. Nico is an interesting player. He's a creative scorer. He's an aggressive scorer. I think sometimes he has issues with shot selection, but he is also a good passer. He's really good in open court. It took me a while, but after thinking about it, I'm going to go with Jeremy Lin as my comparison for Nico Mannion. I think both guys similar height in terms of 6'3". They both attacking guards who excel getting downhill. And both of them, I think, are also very effective passers in that pick and roll as well. I think Mannion probably is a little more slick with his passing, but Lin, especially during the Linsanity, portion of his career, was also a really good passer, really good at finding, guys like Tyson Chandler in that pick and roll. Gotham lob, as the Knicks fans called it back then. So I think that's a pretty apt comparison. They're both aggressive at getting at the rim, both capable shooters, though streaky. I think Mannion, as I said before, settles for too many threes. I think that, again, his shot selection can be improved upon. I think Lin, knowing that he was a capable shooter but streaky, didn't rely on as many threes, and therefore I think shot a better percentage as a pro and even as a college player. I think Mannion maybe got a little 3-point happy at Arizona, and I'm not sure if that's how they were coaching him. So I think that's why the percentage dropped a little bit. But they're unique finishers. I mean, when they get to the rim, they can both finish in a wide array of ways. And I think Mannion, in some ways, is even more impressive because he's so great at the floater game. That's not really something Jeremy Lin excelled at, though he was capable of that in his prime. Mannion can really make some kind of wild shots. Because of the degree of difficulty, again, that does kind of hurt his field goal percentage. Sometimes I'd like to see him kind of just put his head down and just get to the rim, and sometimes that'll result in him getting fouled. And that's something that we saw Jeremy Lin do effectively, and we even see Mannion do effectively. I don't think he does it enough. And I think both guys have good handles. Not, ankle breaker type handles, but I think could maybe lead to questions to whether or not either guy would be great in isolation situations. But they both have decent size. They both have, I'd say, above average to average speed and strength. So to me, Jeremy Lin was a comparison I went with.
Yeah, I agree. The same one.
Wow, I did not think that. Okay.
Yeah, I've had the Jeremy Lin one for a couple of weeks now, and I think the thing that caught me with the Lin comparison is you mentioned the body type, the physical profile, the athleticism, because that's the one thing both guys, they're both really, really solid athletes. And, obviously you never want to go with the whole sneaky athlete. I try to avoid saying it, but it's something that that comes into play with both Lin and Mannion. Those guys will kind of surprise you with their explosiveness. But then you mentioned obviously the scoring ability, the ability to play in pick and roll, the passing ability, basketball IQ. Like there's a lot of positive things to like about Mannion. I don't know if he has, just like Jeremy Lin, you question the ceiling in terms of can he ever be a superstar, but could he be a starting point guard? I think absolutely. Does he maybe project better as a energy kind of change of pace guard off the bench, just like Jeremy Lin kind of ended up. That's kind of where his career kind of solidified at. That's probably what most people view Mannion as or project Mannion as. But I think in the right situation with the right coach like Mike D'Antoni, I think we saw Jeremy Lin have success under Mike D'Antoni. I think Nico Mannion, there are coaches out there that they could unlock his potential as a pick and roll initiator of the offense and a guy who can score on all three levels of the floor, just like Jeremy Lin.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned multiple times, I think that was the thing that stuck out to me the most is when Mannion got in pick and roll, he was really deadly. I think when sometimes if he became a situation where they ran him a lot off the ball on screens, where he's trying to find they running floppy action, where he's pulling up for threes. I don't know if that's really his strength. I wouldn't really have him doing that. But when he was in a situation where he was just in pick and roll situation and he got to read the defense and react, he's very good at these hang dribbles kind of in the paint where he can either pull up for a mid-range shot or he can go with a floater. When he gets in that action, he's really tough. And I think maybe, I don't want to say Sean Miller used him poorly. I think Sean Miller wanted to have him kind of work on all parts of his game. I think once he gets to the NBA, they kind of realize what he's good at. I think that maybe he could find a role, as you said, probably like a change of pace guard off the bench, or maybe he is a starter, but a guy who is coming in looking to score, but can also get guys involved. Mannion, impressive rookie freshman season. I just want to see that shot selection improve. That field percentage was not good. You don't want to see a guy in college shooting below 40%.
Yeah, the issue with Mannion with the field goal percentage, some of that also comes with he had some really rough games against tough competition, which is why I think some people have question marks about him. I mean, he played excellent last year in the All-Star game circuit, the McDonald's game, and particularly in the Nike Hoop Summit where he had 28 points. So he had a lot of hype in NBA circles coming off of that. But in games against Gonzaga and UCLA and some other performances, Oregon, he just was not officiating some of the best teams that he played against. And the percentage, I mean, I don't remember the particular percentage against Gonzaga, but it was
he shot like 2 for 20 or something crazy.
Yeah, it was something crazy. Yeah. So those kind of performances lead to some doubt. But Jeremy Lin's also a guy that wasn't always the most efficient.
True.
But won games a lot of times when he was, especially in New York.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Let's go to a guy that you're very familiar with, a guy that we spoke to during the preseason this year, Precious Achiuwa, power forward, Memphis. I had a hard time finding a player for Precious that wasn't like some of the more obvious picks. I think some of the obvious picks that we've heard, like the Pascal Siakams and things like that, I actually think don't really do him a service. They do him kind of a disservice, especially considering the kind of player he is right now. The closest guy I could find, and he's a little taller than this guy, so I'm gonna kind of hedge it a little bit, but I'm gonna go with SHAWN MARION. But imagine if like SHAWN MARION had like Tayshaun Prince's length. That's kind of how I see Precious Achiuwa, both tenacious finishers who look to finish strong and dunk everything when they get near the rim. They're both lob threats. They can be pick and roll attackers, and they can attack closeouts on the perimeter and drive, which I think is probably the part of Precious's game that I think if you think he's a star, that's the part where you're really excited because you're like, okay, he has that ability. I think that is comparable to SHAWN MARION, but SHAWN MARION was 6'7", maybe 6'7.5" with obviously like a 7'2" wingspan. Precious has again another really long wingspan, 7'2", 7'3", but he's 6'9". So now you're really gonna have to put bigger guys on him, and his ability to attack on the perimeter in those situations could make him a lethal scorer. Defensive versatility, both guys can guard 3-4 positions. Precious is a really good shot blocker. Marion had some shot blocking ability as well. And I think the part that I think is very clear and where they both definitely they're very similar is their aggressiveness on the backboard. Precious is just a beast rebounding. He averaged about 3 offensive rebounds a game this past season, and he's just so tough to handle because you match the athleticism with the effort. That's where you get a guy who can be really tough to handle, and he just dominated some teams on the backboard. And both guys, shooting unreliable, I would say. They both can hit shots, though, and that keeps the defense honest, and that makes them even, again, more deadly offensive players. So Precious Achiuwa is a guy I like. I think that I'm going to keep a close eye as this draft process continues, but I think he has a very high ceiling, and I think me comparing Shawn Marion, and I don't try to give guys all-star comparisons initially, but that's how high I think of Precious right now.
Yeah, Precious Achiuwa, that's certainly a lofty comparison. Obviously, I got on my Tiger Blue. That's my guy. But yeah, no, I mean, I think when you're talking about Precious Achiuwa, you're talking about a player that is kind of a mold of clay. In the same vein, and this isn't the comparison, but almost in the same vein as Zion was, where a guy that kind of comes in and, like, in college kind of got away with, athleticism and strength and motor, and was able to dominate based off of that. And whether or not that translates in the NBA, we'll see. It certainly translated for Zion. We'll see with Precious, because he's not exactly the physical specimen Zion is. But, yeah, I mean, like you said, we've heard comparisons like Pascal Siakam. That's an interesting one, but I think it's a little lofty. I've heard Rudy Gay, but I don't know if he has the shot creation ability of Rudy Gay. And also he played with a much more revved up motor than Rudy Gay ever has.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a good one as well. He's a tough one. Shawn Marion's an interesting one. The one I came up with was Luol Deng, and I think Luol Deng, especially a younger Luol Deng, Luol Deng at Duke. Yes, I think played a little bit more on the perimeter. I think Precious, we saw him a lot play at the 4 and the 5 at Memphis this season, in part because they had a lot of guards and James Wiseman left. So at that point, they didn't have really much of a center. So he was tasked to play the 5. I don't think he likes that position. I think, he had to accept that role, and he accepted it well. But if we're talking about him in the NBA as a 3-4 who could play some small ball 5, I think Luol Deng is a guy that was strong, powerful, a guy who played with a maybe not the motor that Precious Achiuwa has, but still a guy who plays hard, can defend multiple positions, good scorer around the rim. I don't know if they're superstar guys in the NBA, but I think, guys that you certainly want on winning teams, playoff teams. I don't know if, again, Precious Achiuwa, again, such a mold of clay that you wonder, I mean, could he develop, as a shot creator? And could he become a guy? Because he has the athleticism. I don't think he's like, also that's the problem I think with the Rudy Gay comparison, because I don't know if he's the athlete vertically that Rudy Gay is. But he's certainly strong, certainly athletic enough. And so that the closest one I can come up with Luol Deng, but he's certainly a tough one, similar to R.J. Hampton, who we talked about earlier, where I think he's such a mold of clay. He could be Pascal Siakam, or he could be Rudy Gay. Like there are so many different areas. He could be Kenneth Faried for all we know. So it really just depends on how the team that he goes to and what role they look out for him, or they pick for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is fascinating. I think because I feel like, for the most part, our comparisons were pretty close in terms of similarities in the players. I think this is probably one of the first ones. I think we're not even close. I think, to me, when I think of Deng, I think of a much better isolation player than Shawn Marion. Even though Marion may have scored more points, Deng had more creative ability, and maybe that's you projecting that Precious has that, or maybe that he already does have that, and then maybe. Obviously, you hadn't followed him since high school and knowing the kind of player he was and what he kind of became in Memphis due to the circumstance. Maybe I'm not giving him maybe enough credit in terms of his ability to create.
Certainly, I will say if Precious had more of an ISO game, Memphis could have used it. So it's not as if they didn't. It's not as if Penny didn't try to bring it out.
Yeah, that is fair. But I think I think the differences in the players speaks to the mold of play that you mentioned with Precious Achiuwa. Okay, let's go to the next. One more time.
I would say that Deng's certainly more advanced than Precious at the same age.
Yes, I would agree with that.
But I think, Precious, give him 2-3 years. Well, I mean, who knows where he's at? But I think that. I think I can honestly say I think he can be both guys.
I think what's fascinating too. Last thing as well is like to me, I think Precious is going to be a 4 in the NBA, and to me it's like, okay, well, Dang's a 3, but like Dang played in an era where like I don't know if he played today, he'd probably be a 4. Like that's why it's so
100%.
fascinating. Like sometimes comparing these guys from different eras, because like Dang is stretch as a small ball forward, like kill people right now. Like, but like he was playing the 3 because that's how teams played, and like you need a guy that size, that strength to like play the 3. But it's just interesting how like players from different eras can't be comparable, but just the circumstances in which they played may change their positions, quote unquote. But let's do another player who you talked about before that came out a little under the radar this year. Tyrell, point guard from Stanford. I had a tricky time with this guy, so I'm gonna actually let you go first with this one. Who did you go with for Terry?
Interesting. So Tyrell Terry is an interesting prospect. A lot of people throwing out the Trae Young comparison. Obviously, that's extremely lofty because Trae Young is an all-star point guard in his second year. Tyrell Terry not nearly the amount of production Trae Young had at Oklahoma. So I'm going to step back a little bit. The first guy he reminds you of, you definitely want to throw out a little bit of Steph Curry at Davidson as a freshman. That's one guy that I would throw out. But in terms of an NBA comparison, I would look at Patty Mills, who I think Patty Mills is a very good scorer, very good shooter, a guy who can play off the ball. But if you watch him play with Australia, great in pick and roll, guy who can score on all 3 levels. Not a great athlete, but just a sniper. And I think that's what Tyrell Terry is. Does he have a higher ceiling than Patty Mills? Potentially. I think the shooting ability is just, I don't want to say Steph Curry because Steph Curry, his freshman year at Davidson, no one thought would be what Steph Curry is now. He had way more flaws in his game than he does now. At the same age, I think they are very similar, but I can't really project what Tyrell Terry's work ethic is.
You think he's the best shooter in this draft?
Do I think he's the best shooter in this draft? I think so. I don't want to say certainly is a strong word, but and I don't think this is a great draft to find shooting. But
that's true too.
If we're talking about a guy that could score in almost any variety of ways, I think Tyrell Terry is a guy. He can score off the dribble, he can score catch and shoot, he can score running off screens, he can score in isolation. Like he's a very, very crafty scorer and crafty shooter. So I would probably lean Tyrell Terry, but Patrick Mills is a guy. Look, he's a multiple time champion, and or what? If he multiple time, maybe one time, but still, this guy's an NBA champion and is one of the better guards coming off the bench that we've seen in the last 5-6 years. So I'll lean Patrick Mills. I think that's a fine comparison for a guy that is going to be picked anywhere between 12 and 25.
Yeah, I was very impressed with Tyrell Terry looking at his tape. I think I agree. I think he is the best shooter in this draft. For a player comp, it's tricky because the one guy I initially ran to was Landry Shamet. But then when I looked at the size again, he's small. He's only about 6'1", 6'2", maybe. I see some people list him 6'3". I don't think he's that tall. So Shamet's 6'4", 6'5" almost. So I couldn't really go there. So the guy I ended up kind of settling on was Aaron Brooks. Aaron Brooks, people may look at that and say, "Oh man, that's not good." You can't always think about what the whole entirety of their career was. You got to think about sometimes what these guys were at their best. And I think about Aaron Brooks when he was leading the Rockets to the playoffs as their starting point guard, averaging 19 points. A similar guy in that they were exceptional shooters with deep ranges and no conscience. Terry will pull up from anywhere in transition. He'll pull up in the half court. He'll do it in pick and roll. And again, when you hear that, you think, oh, Steph Curry and Trae Young. I'm not going to run there because those guys have exceptional offensive ability that I don't think Terry has. But if I'm trying to think of a similar player, Aaron Brooks was like that. Aaron Brooks was another shooter at the point guard position who had no conscience, can shoot from deep, was effective, was a very good shooter. Terry may actually be a slightly better shooter than Aaron Brooks, but I think that to me, considering their size and their kind of the style of play, I think that they're similar. Neither guy is really overly athletic or really that fast, but they're creative scorers who can score in multiple ways. I think Terry's his assist to turnover ratio wasn't the greatest, but I think he probably has better court vision than Aaron Brooks was. To me, Aaron Brooks was a scorer. I really didn't look at him. He was a shooting guard playing point guard to me. Just size made him the fact that he had to play point, but he wasn't a guy really you were expecting to average 7-8 assists. But Terry, I think probably has more of that ability, though it didn't really show in the stats in college. But when you watch the film, he definitely has really good court vision. So he's probably a slightly better passer. But I think both guys are going to struggle defensively, and that was one of the issues with Aaron Brooks. Who do you guard? As the NBA guards got more, bigger, stronger, faster, he kind of became extinct. And I think there's one concern with Terry. It's okay. You see this high skill level as a shooter, but who is he guarding? And I couldn't tell you. So that's my one question about him. I really like his game offensively, but that's going to be a question for him, and that's something he's going to have to improve on.
Yeah, and all those strengths and weaknesses to me, I think a lot of them scream Patty Mills. But how do you feel about the Steph Curry at Davidson comments, particularly early in his career, Davidson?
I think
obviously he put more on the ball than Steph did early in his career, but I think a lot of his strengths and weaknesses are similar at the same age.
I think as a Steph Curry stand on this YouTube channel and podcast, I think Steph was a more explosive scorer than even Terry was as a freshman. I mean, and I know maybe you say, okay, well, he's playing on Davidson, Terry's playing on Stanford, and Stanford was actually pretty good this year. So maybe if Terry's playing on a small school, he looks like Steph. Maybe. I don't know. And I remember Steph as a freshman. I mean, he was also still like shooting from crazy range, coming off screens from 20, 30 feet away. It's like he was a marvel. Now, I think that yes, they do have similar deficiencies, and I do agree that I think Terry played way more on the ball than Steph did, and perhaps that also leads to the numbers and Steph's scoring. But I think that's the only thing I would say is I don't know if I see Terry as like that kind of scorer, like where like I think that he's a scorer in the NBA, but I think again similar to Mannion, I think he's probably more of like a change of pace guard, who can light it up because of their shooting. And, a high ceiling, maybe they are a starting point guard who's averaging 18, 19 points because they're shooting. But I think Steph was a little more. I thought Seth Curry actually was a little bit better of a comparison to me.
I thought about that as well, but I just think he's a point guard. Seth Curry, I don't think can play the point really. He's gotten there, I guess, a little bit by the end of his career, but I think Terry can actually play the point guard position. So. But whenever you talk about best shooter in the draft moniker, having the best shooter in the draft moniker attached to your name, I would expect he will go high on the high end of that projection in terms of being a lottery pick. I would guess.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in today's game where you need shooting. All right, last player we're gonna do today, Tyrese Maxey, shooting guard, Kentucky. I'll let you go first. Who do you have for Mr. Maxey, freshman again?
Tyrese Maxey, I mean, again, our guard out of Kentucky, it's always an interesting label because as of recent, Kentucky guards or Kentucky players in general are just such a wild card. I mean, there is a narrative that Calipari holds guys back. So you look at the Tyler Hero, you look at Karl-Anthony Towns, Devin Booker, like guys that people maybe were sleeping on, De'Aaron Fox even, that all of a sudden now have way more to their game in the NBA than they did in college. But for those guys, you have a Malik Monk or a Willie Cauley-Stein that kind of levels out of what they were in college. So Tyrese Maxey was a guy that I think was probably miscast at Kentucky, playing with two other point guards that will be in this draft, Ashton Hagans and Emmanuel Quickly. But still, he's what I call a foxhole point guard or a foxhole guard in general. The guy that you just want on your team. In the Marcus Smart, Victor Oladipo kind of mold of a guard that can play on both ends, can score, plays really aggressive. And I think another guy in that mold would be Colin Sexton, who's another guy I'll compare him to. But my comp for Tyrese Maxey, I'm going way back. I know EJ likes to go way back on these comps. I'm gonna go with Bobby Jackson, guy who played in Sacramento.
Okay.
And in Houston, New Orleans. But, Bobby Jackson, obviously in Sacramento, kind of a dynamite scorer off the bench, could give you a lot on both ends. Could get good athlete, underrated athlete, and I think Maxey he's not an above the rim type finisher, but certainly quick enough and athletic enough to finish at the rim and can get by guys. I don't know if I trust his point guard instincts, and I don't know if he's big enough to play off the ball, to play the two, unless he's playing with a two guard that can play the point. So that's why I say Bobby Jackson, who's also a guy that wasn't really a true point guard, but which is kind of limited his ceiling and made him more of an off the ball or off the bench rather scoring option. So I think I like Maxey and I like Bobby Jackson. Colin Sexton's another guy I would say, but Colin Sexton he's early in his career, so I don't really know what Colin Sexton is really even. But I think they have the similar issue of being that guy who's plays with a lot of energy, a lot of heart, but is probably a little undersized and not a point guard.
Yeah, I really like your description of Maxey, foxhole guard. He's kind of the guy that, kind of like in football when you see like a defender and you say, what position is he? And you're like, football player. Like, Maxey's kind of the same way. He's like, what position is he? Basketball player. Like, I don't know what position you're putting him at. I wouldn't play him at the one for a long period of time, but if you need him to play the one, I'd be fine with it because I know the guys can get buckets.
He's a smart player, too. Yeah.
He's going to have to play the two a lot of the time, and that's fine, I think, with me as well because he's going to compete at a high level. I went with Gary Harris for my comparison for Tyrese Maxey. I think Bobby Jackson's a good one. I think he's a little taller than Bobby Jackson. I think Bobby Jackson's usually 6'1". We'll see what Maxey ends up coming out as. Like they list him at 6'3". We'll see if that's accurate. I think if that is accurate, I think it could be.
And Gary Harris is shorter than people thought.
Right. Yes. Exactly. And Gary Harris.
I thought in Michigan State he was 6'5".
Right, and he ended up being 6'3". And I think when I think of both guys, big shot makers with range. Gary Harris was not afraid of the big shot at Michigan State. He was good coming off screens. Maxey also excellent coming off screens. I think that him and Terry, honestly, probably the two best guys playing off the ball, I think, in the draft. Maxey was exceptional at using pin downs, using curls to get his shot, and they're both advanced skills playing off the ball. As I said, they're a little undersized because their height, but their toughness kind of overcomes that, and their ability to shoot and their ability to finish. Neither guy I think is a great ball handler, but they're both much good enough to get their shots off to be again, functional offensive players. I like Maxey a lot. I think that he's a tough kid. I like that he likes the big shot. Like, I agree. I think that the foxhole guard mentality is a good description for this player. I think that a team that gets him, I don't know where he's going to go, but in a draft that has a lot of question marks, I don't know if I'm passing up a guy who I think I know. He's going to come into my locker room. He's going to try to compete for PT day one. And I think you're going to have a lot of kids who are going to come in who maybe kind of feel their way out. I don't see Maxey being that kind of guy.
I think Maxey's going to go higher than a lot of people project because, I think in part because of how he was miscast at Kentucky playing. I think that's going to be a narrative that we see going into this draft is that, Maxey didn't show much in terms of playmaking ability. He's going to have to play the point guard probably, but how could he playing with Higgins and Quickly? So. Right. I think that should certainly help him. And then the Kentucky history of guards and players that have overachieved. I mean, Tyler Hero last year especially, people are going to be thinking about that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him go higher than usual. One thing that you mentioned earlier, you asked me who the best shooter in the draft is. One guy I forgot, just in case people in the comments don't go crazy. Aaron Nesmith from Vanderbilt is a marksman. And the guy, I think he shot like 51% from three. It was a smaller sample size because he got hurt, but he's someone I'm sure we'll do in a later video. But
no Vanderbilt guard got hurt, but put a great shooting numbers.
Yeah,
who does that remind you of?
Yeah, no, I haven't heard that before.
But that's a fair point. But what do you guys think of these comparisons? What do you think of Maxey? What do you think of Achiuwa, Terry, Mannion? Make sure you leave a comment below. Make sure you like this video, and if you enjoyed our content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. Not only do we do draft videos and other types of videos regarding sports and superheroes, we also do a podcast, New Generation Sports Talk. You can find it on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Thank you guys so much for watching. For Kendall, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.